Welcome back. The Face Off, Friday night. Peter Kivazo, Charles Romshana, Kano Felix Kuraije, and Arthur Bainomsha. Charles and Arthur and Felix, I need to come to the here now of Africa. Because sometimes we demonize these guys that receive the instruments of power. I remember Tango Doi teaching the history of Uganda would go back to the independence Uganda and say how many graduates Bench Wanuka received as he was taking over power. And when I look at the second liberation, the one that brought in the generals, that President Museveni at some time defined as buffoons, sometimes I am at pains. I'm thinking, Idi Amin, in spite of all his inadequacies, never robbed Uganda. He didn't go home with the team. The houses they stayed in, they left for Uganda. The generals across Africa, Nigeria, South Sudan, Uganda, carry on. The Ndaifashe scenario in Rwanda. I was in Rwanda just after the genocide as they were settling in. And the Ndaifashe word and all my friends that tried their leg at the Red Cross I have grabbed it.
The word is not bad.
What is it?
You know, some of us are indeed.
I don't know how to say it right.
The word is Kubohoza, not in the Ifashe.
Well, at least this is
yes, but
now this is the definition of
you have
that's the word they were using.
You have the rogues, educated, scholarly, exposed, but purely ethnic to the core, resource hungry.
Which education are you talking about?
Schooled.
I would love to contest Kuriji's assertion.
Okay, if I have the soundbite from Afande Kuraije, so we get it out of the way.
What's the solution? Political education to the soldiers. So the soldier understands his historical mission. What is it? To serve the interests of the population. So no matter how decorated the general will come, as long as his articulation is against the interests of the people, we shall shun him, because we know our history, we know where we are, we know where the country wants to go.
So,
okay. We'll do interpretations of which generals you are talking about at another forum.
You see, what Kureja was not raising is not the consensus of the army. Because the general who took over after the collapse of Compaore is not the one who is leading the country. A junior officer, a lieutenant colonel, is the one who is doing it. So there is some illiterate captain somewhere that if you say no, would take over. Because you are very far from the family. And that's the problem. The problem is that those who took over from our forefathers after independence are personalizing the state. Yes, they are personalizing the state. If you go through, everyone wants now to be protected by his own son, by his own daughter.
Baraka.
Yes,
Mobutu,
yeah. If you go, yes. In other words, yes.
Yoweri,
yeah, including my
Kagame.
Yeah, all of them. Other even in the greater Zimbabwe, whose civilization has linked on, is saying, "I'm even giving you my wife." She got a PhD in a week. I'm giving you my wife. I was here. General Sare was rising very fast at having a degree. You remember? I think it has told.
No, you are not being fair.
No, yes.
General Sare is one of the most modest. He went back and sat senior for young.
He became the minister of defense when he was not qualified to be member of parliament, and he had to be termed as overseer. Have you forgotten?
Yeah,
yes. What does that mean? What does that mean?
But overseer was not a minister.
Okay, carry on, Charles.
So, they attempted at making him the minister of defense. It could not work, and they changed the title to overseer. It's part of Uganda's history.
If we could discuss issues and not personalities.
That's the problem of Africa. That the elite with the military have now combined and they have taken over the nation.
We are waiting.
So to make Uganda was not easy. To have a Muchiga agree with the Msebei, agree with the Karamajong, agree with the Rugbal. agree with the Munyoro, agree with the Muganda, and make Uganda, have a Mufumbira on the board and make Uganda was not easy. Our fathers made it and developed the national consensus. So we had the national consensus. Of course, we had some bit of contradictions, we had some bit of problems and challenges where Uganda was saying we need to have our own parliament, but it could have been resolved. And where are we now? We do no longer have a national consensus. The national consensus.
I request you information.
I listened.
I request you information. I request you to go and
Through
read.
him.
Yes.
Yes, carry on, Felix.
I request you to go and read Iwinjira's book on page 91.
Now you can see the problem.
Yes.
No, it is okay to
Yes.
send you to a book.
Yes. Where he is quoting Obote, pointing at Karugaba, and saying the reason why he can't appoint him. I'm a commander, despite the advice of the British. Because the British are saying that's a trained officer, he would be a better commander. He said, I can't trust him. And he asked why. He said, he's a Catholic. So the people are saying, go build consensus. He could not trust him because he's a Catholic. That's
Religion.
Yes,
That is the other one that we had missed out.
Yes, I'm not saying we didn't have these challenges. But you see, the question of the moderator is that we, the elites, you who are revolutionaries, have you graduated from it? When you attempt at removing, changing command from Aronda regime and bringing in General, the current CDF,
Katumba.
General Katumba, immediately there must be a Mhozi, who is in charge of the land forces. Yes, I mean,
show me the same in, for
In what?
example, Sudan.
In
South Sudan.
which is now in South Sudan. You mean there's an extra district?
But-
It's total confusion. That's why they're in a civil war. They are is worse.
Must not be
No, but I mean,
command.
you see the can I be protected?
Just
much
finish
time do we
this, pretty.
Few minutes, so if you could distribute time to reality, all of us.
That's
Can you
Africa's,
finish,
that's
finish,
Africa's
yes.
problem.
Because
So
because I think we
Romshana, finish.
so you say keep the army out of politics. Actually, when we were in the Constituent Assembly, we elevated it, we defined it. Keep the army out of partisan politics. What situation are you having now? Not only are you having the army in partisan politics, it has even entered into the internal dynamics of the organization.
Oh.
And of course we don't have enough time.
Yes,
so
very
now then
briefly,
you go
Charles, because-
on national. It says
Is
the
that
army.
true of Africa, or are you dealing with an isolated case of Uganda?
You
That's-
see, it
I think
graduated.
we have-
In Africa, that's
we
why
have
you had.
localized it too
That's
much.
why you had coups. That's why you had coups. You had coups because of the intervention of the military in politics, and they would be supported by the population. Quite very often there would be celebrations. Now Kureja has qualified it that if you are a soldier or anybody and you are not answering the interests of the population, the military will come in. Yes.
No.
The military will come in. He has defined him as a general,
You are-
whether you are retired or not.
You are even misquoting me.
And what you see,
when
we
was
will not
that?
allow means what? You know, you are getting involved in determining people's interests. How are people's interests determined? They are determined through a consensus through parliament. These are civil organs.
Yes.
So what would prompt you?
What will
How would you determine that a retired Kano SJ has violated people's interests? How would you determine it?
Can I explain
No.
Yes.
the context in which
Yes,
this was? I think
then I
it's
come to
one turn. Yes.
Arthur.
Yes.
Beyond Uganda, because I'm looking at this, you have Kenya that hasn't been run by generals,
Yes.
or where the generals have been behind the curtains for largely all the time.
Yeah.
They popped their heads in 1982 at the attempted coup and went back behind the scene.
Yeah.
You have the near collapse of Kenya after the election that brought Kibaki back to power, the second Kibaki. But they've largely smoothened their edge. Was that because the army was kept out of power in that area? How do you explain Tanzania? How can we have neighbors like Kenya and Tanzania, and you have Uganda collapse, you have Mobutu collapse, you have Rwanda totally. Of course, Rwanda, Kulaije labored on the ethnic dispensation and the colonial deliberate divide. But How do you explain Kenya against the rest of us and Tanzania against the rest of us?
Very fast. Yes, the army came out and made coups across Africa, and that also was a colonial design. I don't want to belabor that point because I know people have been saying Africa is 50 years old. We don't need to blame it on the colonialism. But you see, most of those people who came out of the barracks had been trained in Sandhurst. And you see, as the colonists went grudgingly, they were able to pull the strings, and then we saw coups. But in the case of Kenya, Kenya's coup actually was stopped by the external powers who had interest in the stability of that country. And so they could not allow confusion in Kenya. But in here, wait. In Uganda,
you see, sometimes we give these colonists a lot of
and that's
power that they
empirical evidence. Because you see, I am here.
Think of Blaise Compaoré.
I'm here as a scholar. So let me give
I
you
know.
evidence. Yes.
Think of Blaise Compaoré, and I need you to add this to your mix.
Yes.
The biggest French footprint in Africa is
in Côte d'Ivoire.
Okay. Yes, but they also have a major footprint in Burkina Faso.
That's correct.
The Americans have used Burkina Faso as a launch pad for a bit of, what is it called, AFRICOM. They have had a foot in AFRICOM. And Compaoré, by any standards, has been a darling to the French. When the people rose, Compaoré took to his heels. Where were the French and the Americans?
Because his time was up, and the French interests remain permanent, and people can expire.
So was Kenya because the time wasn't up, or was it because of the Americans and the Brits?
No, I even didn't say the Americans or the Brits, but I talked about the stability. But in the case, even in the case of Tanzania, we just wait. Let me really explain this question. Kenya and Tanzania. In the case of Tanzania, actually, even the coup, there was actually a coup attempt, and was also foiled by, of course, by the support, the external support, and actually, Tanzania, Nyerere responded by actually disbanding the entire army and recruiting a new army, and ideologically an opportunity that we missed, and built a new ideology or doctrine of the army that actually is pro-people. Now, in the case of Uganda, Idi Amin, there is now evidence, because this is declassified information. Of course, CIA and Mossad were behind the coup, because Obote had gone, this is during the Cold War, Obote had launched the Common Man's Charter, and Uganda was going to communism, and they could not allow Uganda to fall under communist and the ambit of communism. So anyway, but we can't belabor. We have also to blame ourselves. We've been in power for 50 years. What have we done as African people? But to turn against our people instead of actually helping them. So the whole question of leadership that Kano Kuraje talks about, I think we need to blame ourselves. Here is an opportunity. We need to espouse the interests of our people and protect this country.
And are we?
But also let me add that we need to. That's why as we move towards conclusion, there is serious need to invest in leadership training. We need to build leadership, and of course, leadership is very important.
The solution for Peace for Africa is to build leadership,
credible, patriotic leadership, but it's also Pan-African. Okay. And I think that is very, very important.
I will possibly differ with you. My gut is the way for Africa to get peace is to build civic populations that are totally aware and firm. If Kulaije looks the other direction and the population says no, either Kulaije will take to his heels or he will listen.
But that would be the second point, because you see, leadership leadership is very critical. Look at America and Washington.
Yes.
Look at Mandela and South Africa.
Felix.
Yes.
What Mr. Chibazo does not know, I'll give you an example. There's a European power whose government is in most cases against the wishes of the population. The population does not agree with the decisions taken by their government. They don't overthrow it. Informed and aware as they are.
No, they chase it at the next election.
Exactly. But it continues. Even the one which comes in. What Sarkozy did, Hollande is doing.
Okay? Yeah, but those people have hope. They have hope
what Blair
that
did,
they will still chase Hollande.
What Blair did.
But the people of my country would have no hope. They will say, even this man we can't chase.
I'm giving you knowledge. Please, accept to take it. What Blair did, Cameron is doing. The majority of the British population don't support those wars.
They will chase Cameron.
So anyway, back to our question here. 1964, the three East African countries had mutinies. This is what he was talking about.
You have about 4 minutes.
Yes, I will summarize.
Okay, carry on,
Summarize.
guys. It is, I am the
The
moderator.
moderator, not you.
But yeah, we had usurped his power.
No,
Can you allow your-
I was exerting my freedom. Now, Nyerere disbanded the army.
Yes.
Kenya did inter-transfers and dismissals. Uganda promoted. We met all the demands, including increasing the defense budget by 400% retrospectively. Because the meeting was in February, the increment was effected from January. What happened? Not only did we stop at that, 64, the army kills people in Nakurabi. Nothing. 66, there's a contradiction politically. The army is brought in to solve the problem. 67, a new constitution is introduced under the guardianship of APCs surrounding parliament. So, what
Like
happens?
they did around the High Court recently. Carry on.
Therefore, the army sees itself as a political arbiter, but politically illiterate. Now, in Kenya, he mentioned it. The Kenyan military has always been under certain control. They don't determine their decisions. That's why even when there was a stalemate in the negotiations in 2008, Susan Rice came to Nairobi with its act.
Who controls the army?
Don't think I'm free to, I'm at liberty to disclose it now. It's up to you, go and do your own research.
That of course effectively says that there is someone that controls.
Yes.
It is the who that we can
Yes.
discuss. Carry
So,
on.
so the point, therefore, in our case, Ethiopia's case, the question of national liberation changes the mindset of the men and women in combat. And when I talk about the people's interest, and he was asking me who determined the people's interest, of course the people determine their interests. And when we gave one statement, it was in the CA, we gave one statement in the CA, we shall abide by the decision of the people of Uganda.
Yeah, but you see, you know, these are.
It's not about sentiment.
They are very interesting
It's not
statements.
about.
Let's
It's
be
not
honest
about
and interrogate some of this really. Parliament commissioned a study on what led to the death of Nebanda. Parliament couldn't meet to discuss a report over the death of their own. Because there was a decree over my dead body and they couldn't meet.
No, that's not the point. The point was different. The statement which had been made. Are you aware? People claim the Nebanda never drank. I was with the Nebanda in Sweden,
Fine.
and she was drinking. So what are you telling me?
Yeah, but you see, was
Our
Parliament
silence does not
allowed?
mean we are foolish.
No, was Parliament allowed to
The
debate it?
statements that were made undermined the Parliament.
So, and then you threatened it.
The statements that were made, I never made any statement. I was spokesman. I did not. So do not misrepresent me. I'm here.
Now, I'm not talking about
Yes,
you. I'm
yes.
talking about
But-
the official. Because
yes,
the commander in chief did.
No, as head of state, he did, and there were reasons.
The commander in chief.
Yes, there were reasons.
Yes,
First,
Felix,
to get those reasons.
how do you
So-
arrive at a peace in
so-
Africa? We need
Yeah,
to get
peace
out
in
of
Africa,
it.
then
How
Africa.
do you arrive at a peace in the
Peace in
larger
Africa,
Africa?
first of all,
Very good.
one, I agree with you, a conscientized population.
You want peace?
Certainly.
You will not have it.
We just continue. I think we
A
need to,
conscientized
because
population.
we are
The
sharing.
population must know their rights, must know how to protect them.
I agree with you 100%.
The population must know their responsibilities. And that's why Tanzania we are talking about practices national service. Kenya we are talking about practices national service. It makes a difference.
Can I add democratization? I think we need to deepen democratization. We need to reform the state.
We possibly haven't
We
started
need to
on the
reform
journey
the-
for democratization.
Now, deepening, we have
but-
democratized.
But you see,
Democracy is a journey.
that can't be
We need
on
to
the
deepen
background
democratization.
of national
We need to
looting, supported and protected by the military.
Well,
democratization,
Chess
democratization,
then you must sit at
democratization.
them violently.
Mr.
You want to have to
Democratization.
get out of
Mr.
here.
Romushana,
Of course,
I am
this
wondering
debate
if
continues.
you-
The different thanks to Arthur Bainomsha at Accord and the guys at Bradford that have been asking why war in Africa. This engagement and several other questions. Why war in Africa? I'm one of the believers that if you have a conscientious population that will put their foot down, whether it means chasing leaders out of power on foot, or whether it means doing what the Nigerians have done in spite of the army. They chased Boko Haram and captured their territory when the army had taken off. Good night.
If you believe that statement.
Boko Haram has taken over another city this evening.